Hi everyone, so I'm Lucy and I work as fashion show assistant at Vogue International. I'm actually changing jobs in 2 weeks. I'm moving over to Vogue Business as an editorial assistant. It's a bit of a lateral move, but more into the writing side, but I'll go into that a bit later. So basically Vogue International, to contextualise, I don't work at British Vogue, people get confused about that. So we're a global digital only office based on the Strand. And basically Condé Nast International a couple of years ago decided that in order to compete in the digital world, they needed to future-proof their brands like Vogue and GQ, Vanity Fair, by producing digital editorial content centrally and then translating it out and sending it across the world. And they also do that for products as well, so we have around 100 developers, and they're currently trying to centralise the content management system for every Condé Nast brand in the world. So yeah, there's huge projects going on, but it's great being in the digital space and the international space, because for me, I should probably start with what I did. So I majored in cultures and minored in health and environment when I was on BASc. And I already spoke French before I got here because I lived in Paris for a year before I came. So I actually took up Russian as a new language and carried on with the French. And then the health and environment, I did a lot of anatomy, pharmacology, a bit of biochemistry as well. And I kept it really varied the whole way through. I did probably half and half. And people are kind of surprised when they hear that I now work in fashion. But I think to be a journalist, it's just about being curious. And journalism is essentially just studying people, and fashion is about people. So my dissertation, for example, was about gender differences, cultural gender differences, and how that affects the suicide rate. And it was quite sociological. And since I've served on committees at work about how the GQ man should evolve and we should try and avoid toxic masculinity, and I could bring that to the table. So BASc can really equip you in various ways. But how I got here, I, like Rob, knew exactly what I wanted to do before I even started BASc. So I was kind of lucky in that respect. I did a lot of unpaid internships, never very long, just like 2 weeks at a time. I'd always keep them to the holidays, so every holidays basically I'd do one. So I interned at Red Magazine a couple of times. I'd always try and go back as well, which people don't really tend to do, but it's good to do maybe 2 weeks and then be like, I actually feel like I've got more to give. Have you got some other work I could do for you? And then I was at House and Garden magazine as well. When I was on my year abroad, actually, when I lived in Paris the first time, I interned for Roxanda, a British designer. Well, she's Serbian, but she's based in London. And I worked in her showroom. She does buyers' appointments to sell her collection across the world. And then when I went back to Paris on my year abroad, I interned for her again. So that was 3 years later. And it was keeping those connections and those contacts. And eventually, while I was on my year abroad as well, I sent out a cold email to every magazine in the country and abroad, and just said, I'm finishing university, have you got any internships for the summer, or have you got some unpaid placements throughout the year, or I'll shadow for a week, I don't mind. Sent my CV, sent some writing examples, and then the only response that I got was from British Vogue, and that was, I asked in March and I heard back in September, and that was the only response out of about 15. And then so I went there and I went for my interview, and they actually said, come in after your exams, don't come in at Easter, because I was like, I'll come in whenever, I can do Easter just before my final year exams, which would have been stupid. And they said, no, come in after your exams. So I went there for 3 weeks unpaid, and that was the July, as I finished here in the May. And then from there, I was every single day just was a yes person. I stayed late, I asked before I left if there was anything I could do for the rest of the day. And then I was still looking for jobs while I was there because I was panicking, obviously final year, and at the end of final year. And there was a job in Vogue International that came up, assisting Susie Menkes, who is one of the biggest fashion journalists in the world. She's about 75. She's sort of in the league of she sits next to Anna Wintour at the shows, so that's like the kind of thing. She's based in London. And basically the British Vogue team recommended me to Susie's team because I got on with them so well during this 3 weeks. So I was pulled in for an interview straight away. I had jeans and a t-shirt on because I didn't know that I was being interviewed by Susie that day.
You've done the Devil Wears Prada, the whole thing, haven't you?
Yeah. And Susie loved that I spoke French. She loved that because she interviewed a lot of people in French, and I used to transcribe for all her French interviews, which she never had an intern that could do that before. And she kind of loved that I spoke Russian as well for the novelty. So then I was with Susie.
Yorkshire, I speak Yorkshire, don't you?
Rochdale. I was with Susie for 6 months. She kept me on for an extra 3, and then from there I was in my induction. When I was starting with Susie, you have like a business induction where you get your health and safety training, etc. And the managing editor of the new Vogue International editorial team was in my safety induction, And I spoke to her and I remembered her saying, oh, we always keep good interns. I always try and keep good interns. So I sent her an email when I was finishing up with Susie, and we went for a coffee, and she said, I think I've got a role for you. She said, we're launching a new fashion shows team and we're centralising how we produce fashion shows content. So 26 Vogues currently send editors and photographers to shows and process all those images in 26 places and upload them 26 times. But we're actually creating a new team and they're going to commission all fashion shows content here from London. So I went for that, and then here I am. So it's kind of complex what I do. It's kind of in two parts. There's the fun stuff, which is I've got to travel. I went to New York and worked at American Vogue for a week to build our relations with them, because we were kind of taking over Vogue Runway, which was their fashion shows experience, and evolving it. So it's been quite a tough transition. And I got to, because I speak Russian, I got to go to Tbilisi Fashion Week in Georgia and cover that, which was amazing. I'm going back there in May as well. But then the other side of my job is very heavy production. So it's placing probably 500, I think we cover 526 shows a season. And that's September and February, and then there's global fashion weeks all year, and we have to place photographers at every single one of those shows and make sure that all those images come in perfectly. And we also send editors, and yeah, it's a huge job, but I love it. So yeah.
Amazing. Yeah. Thank you, Lucy. I have only really one question. Are your mum and dad all right now?
Are they all right?
Because at graduation they wanted to have a bit of a go at me,
Oh really?
Do you remember that?
No, I don't remember.
Oh, we were very doubtful about all this, what you're doing to our daughter and all this.
Oh, actually, yeah, I do think I do remember that. I had to go back to the office that day after graduation, so I think I was a bit like, yeah.
They're happier.
They're chuffed. My dad tells everyone in the pub I work at Vogue.
What do you think made you sort of stand out to get a job, like to sort of get in?
I'm very friendly, very talkative, and I will always pick up the phone. I think people these days, especially in fashion, you can hide behind like sending loads of emails. When I was at British Vogue, I'd just ring people up, and it's amazing how quick you can get an answer. And it was just like being quite social. It's a very social industry. Like the parties and the events and things seem like kind of perks, and they are. But you go to the shows, and from 9 a.m. till like 11 at night, you have to be on form and chatting to people and meeting people. So it's being that kind of social person, I think, like makes you stand out. Then people recommend you on because they're friends with you.
And is it really bitchy?
The print business, yes. Digital business, no. Yeah,
That's
so
interesting.
yeah.
Is that because it's a slightly younger crowd in the digital?
I think it's a bit of both. I mean, in my office, there's probably 50 editorial people and 150 developers, and they don't care about fashion at all. So we're in these meetings where there's like one project manager, 2 coders, one fashion editor, and you can't behave in like the traditional fashion way.
No one cares if you did. So,
yeah.
Amazing. Cool. Thank you. What a great presentation.